Let's see if this works. So, once again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem, wa ala alihi, وصحبه أجمعين. So, inshallah ta'ala, we'll try this again and hopefully it'll stick this time. And I'll check in 2-3 minutes in again to make sure that the sound is working, bidhnillahi ta'ala. So, I was saying that subhanAllah, I'm falling in love again with these ayat, and I think that just as we find, as we study the Quran deeper from a structural perspective, how every surah ties in so beautifully into the next surah, we're finding how, these ayat, especially these blessed groupings, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a group of people, and then Allah Azza wa Jalla lists out a bunch of qualities about those people, especially how those can be so much more coherent than we may have previously thought. So we were talking about so many different elements of Ibadur Rahman, so many different elements of the qualities of the Most Merciful. And where we left off, and similar to the angel series where it's kind of this element of your life ties into this element of your life, you go from the loud outside world to the innermost part of your home where Sharaf al-Mu'min qiyamuhu bil-layl, the nobility of the believer is their night prayer, a place of sujood, and that's the imagery. So what are they saying in their sajda? What are these people calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they're in the corner of their homes and they are making sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in private? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا اصْرِفْ عَنَّا عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمَ إِنَّ عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غَرَامًا إِنَّهَا سَاءَتْ مُسْتَقَرًّا وَمُقَامًا. Those are the people who entreat, and when they say, our Lord, ward off from us, رَبَّنَا اصْرِفْ عَنَّا, ward off from us, عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمَ, the punishment of hell, إِنَّ عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غَرَامًا, verily its punishment is one that clings, it's one that sticks. And subhanAllah, the word gharama, it actually comes from the same root as that which is used to describe a debtor who won't leave you alone, a debtor who stalks you. So when they say rajulun ghareem, imagine owing someone money, and as you owe that person money, they stalk you. Everywhere you are, they show up, and they keep on calling you, they keep on watching you, they keep on following you, and you feel like you cannot escape their sight, and you cannot escape the right that you owe to them. They're not letting you forget, and they're not letting you get away from the right that you owe to them. So these people refer to adhab jahannam, they refer to the punishment of hellfire as gharama. It's like that rajulun ghareem. Anytime you try to escape it, it will catch you. And of course, there's a physical element to this that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Malik, the angel that guards the hellfire. And the Prophet ﷺ saw him on the night of Al-Isra and Mi'raj, and he wasn't smiling, and he was, he had a very frightening appearance. And it's not that he looks like that. It's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes him to appear that way to the people as they're in hellfire. So the idea of the guardians of hellfire, not letting a person leave hellfire. So it's gharama, it just keeps pulling you back in. And subhanAllah, I think one of the highlights of Quran 30 for 30 was when Sister Tesliima was on, and she was talking about this idea of you can't escape, right? It grabs you back, and it's not healthy to think of an escape. And one of the reasons why we try to escape thoughts of punishments in the hereafter is because we want to escape any consequences or any commitments in this life. And so it's a matter of convenience, putting it off, and saying, لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Even if we go to hellfire, we'll only be there for a day or two. Eventually, La ilaha illallah will get us out, so we'll only be there for some time. And so it's okay if I have this sin that I'm insisting upon. It's okay if I do a little bit of this. It's okay if I'm, if I cheat here. It's okay if I do this. It's okay if I... And so a person starts to belittle their sins because they've belittled the consequences of those sins. Okay? So, rajulun ghareem, like a stalker that you owe money to, and that debtor is a stalker and stalking you until they get their right from you. And that is the way that these people refer to hellfire. Inna adhabaha kana gharama, that its punishment is one that clings. Innaha sa'at mustaqarran wa muqama. Verily, it is a wretched abode and resting place. Sa'at mustaqar. Mustaqar refers to ever present, so it speaks to it as a place. Muqama is like iqama, it's never ending. Okay, so it speaks to time. So again, mustaqarran meaning an ever present place. Muqama meaning its punishment is for a never ending time. And so they say innaha sa'at mustaqarran wa muqama. And so these people are expressing a fear of the punishment of the hellfire, and you know, it connects in a very interesting way to the ayat before. But first and foremost, before I even get to the connection, and Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah, he pointed out something that's very powerful. He says, أي إنهم يقولون ذلك عن علم. They're saying this with certainty, as if they've seen hellfire, as if they've seen hellfire, right? So they're speaking about hellfire. إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما. They're speaking about it as a matter of fact, and they're speaking about it from a place of knowledge, as if they've seen it. So there is full certainty in its existence, and there's full certainty in its punishment. There's nothing hypothetical about this. And they don't have to experience it to know that it is all of those things that they've given it in terms of description, because for them, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, they're people that believe in the unseen. Allah telling us about it through as-Sadiq al-Masduq, the trustworthy one, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah telling us about it through him, it's as if we would have seen it. Okay, and so Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, for example, that if I was to see Jannah, if I was to see it with my own two eyes, I would not want it more than I already want it. And if I was to see hellfire, then I would not fear it more than I already fear it. And of course, what he was talking about is this idea that, you know, I know it's there. I know Jannah is real. Al-Jannatu haqq wa naru haqq. And I know Jahannam is real. I know these things are real. And I have certainty about them. One of the hadith that we'll discuss in the angel series, towards the end, the very famous hadith about the angels finding the circles of dhikr, the circles of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking the angels, what are they asking for? What's their ask? And they're asking you for paradise. And Allah says, have they seen it? And Allah knows they haven't seen it, that we haven't seen it. But the way that they're expressing that desire for paradise, it's as if they've seen it. And the angels would say, no. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the angels, so how would it be had they seen it? And when it comes to fear of hellfire, what are they asking for? They're asking for the protection from hellfire. Have they seen it? And the angels say no. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, how would it be had they seen it? Right? Like, how much more fear would they have of it had they actually seen it? And so this is the difference between, and this is not just the plug of yaqeen, but hopefully you're understanding why we chose the name yaqeen, you know, over this time. Ilmul yaqeen to aynul yaqeen, right? To the knowledge of certainty, or certain knowledge and certain experience, to actually see it, right? To actually see it with certainty. And so the closer that ilmul yaqeen gets to aynul yaqeen, that the knowledge, that the certainty that you have through knowing of it is just as much as had you seen it, as aynul yaqeen, the closer that you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more that you work in accordance with that. One of the Salaf, Abu Hazim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said during the night one night, because this is regarding Qiyamul Layl and the people that should be praying at night. He said, "Ajibtu min al-Jannah, kayfa nama talibuha." He said, I'm amazed by paradise. How is it that the one who is pursuing paradise is sleeping? Ajibtu min al-Jannah. I'm amazed by Jannah. How is it that talibuha, the one who is seeking it, is asleep right now? Qala wa ajibtu min al-nar. And I'm amazed by hellfire. Kayfa nama haribuha. How is the one who is trying to escape it? Haribuha is the runaway. How is the one who's trying to run away from it asleep right now? And so both of these things, يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا, as Allah says in Surah As-Sajdah, they call out to their Lord out of fear and hope. Both of these things, the desire for paradise and the fear of hellfire, those things together mean less sleep. That means more prayer at night. That means more khalwa, more seclusion, and more dua, more supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from those things and to elevate you. And the goal of all of that is to get to a point where hope and fear are overcome by that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. And so, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said about Suhaib al-Rumi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, لَوْلَا يَخَافُ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَعْصِهِ. He said, even if he didn't fear God, he still would not disobey him. Even if he didn't fear Allah, he would not disobey him. Why? Because he loved Allah that much. He loved Allah that much. And so, the body that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentioned, the body of the believer is the love of Allah. The two wings are fear and hope. This is a specific appeal to the fear part of this, a healthy fear, not despair. Remember, healthy fear never becomes despair. Healthy hope never becomes delusion. Okay, so that's the fine line. Healthy fear never should become despair. Healthy hope should never become delusion. So what are the connections to the previous ayat? Number one, these are ibad al-Rahman. These are the servants of Ar-Rahman. And so they are appearing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His rahmah. They're appealing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy. Okay? So the servants of the Most Merciful appealing to Allah for His mercy. There's something very beautiful about that in particular. Number two, and this is a profound point. One of the dangers of being someone who has both a righteous life in private and a righteous life in public, which has already been established by these ayats. Okay, so what's been established thus far in the description of the servants of the Most Merciful is that they pray at night. يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. They're in prayer at night. And during the day, these people carry out their lives with extraordinary grace. Okay? So they're graceful during the day with Allah's creation, and they are grateful to Allah in the night through prayer and supplication. So you've got a beautiful connection of your private life, your public life. MashaAllah, it's all there, right? So what can happen to this person? Well, that person could become proud. That person could become conceited. That person could start to see themselves in a certain light, and they could become prideful and boastful. And so then the thought of hellfire is like, yeah, that's for those other people. They could become judgmental. They could, because, you've got to realize if shaitan cannot attack you from the left, he will attack you from the right. If shaitan cannot attack you from the left, he'll attack you from the right. If he can't attack you by getting you to commit certain sins, either in the form of following your desires or in the form of responding to foolish people, then he's going to attack you through your prayer, through your fasting, through those good deeds, and try to corrupt them and corrupt you by inserting pride and conceitedness and showing off, ostentation, and being condescending, right? So looking down upon, he's going to try to corrupt you from the right side if he can't get you from the left side. And so the beauty of this ayah, and this is the second connection to the previous ayat, is that these are people whose worship has not made them proud to presume that they are from the awliya of Allah, they're from the beloved ones of Allah, and they don't have to worry anymore. The fire of hell will not touch them. That's for those foolish people. The fire is for those foolish people that we just, that we said salam to outside. The fire is for those people that aren't praying right now while I'm praying. The fire is for those people that are watching Netflix while I'm praying Qiyamul Layl. Right? That's who the fire is for, not for me. I'm exempted from that category. Okay? So on the other hand, what we find here is that, even though they have those good qualities, they're still afraid. They still have a healthy fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are praying to their Lord to save them from the punishment of the fire. And so, this is a very powerful connection to the previous ayat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, inshallah ta'ala, in a moment. The third connection to the previous ayat is that, Allah Azza wa Jal just took us from a scene where إِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. People are bothering them, distracting them, and they're too focused. So I want you to think of a scene where a person is trying to get to a really important appointment. All right? And as that person's trying to get to a really important appointment, things are happening on the way to that appointment, and they just want to get there, right? So let's say, for example, your appointment's at, I'm not wearing my watch right now, but your appointment's at 2:00, and you get to the parking lot at 1:59, and you start running, right, from the parking lot to the appointment. And as you're running from the parking lot to the appointment, someone yells at you, says something derogatory, says something really dumb to you, and you don't bother with that person because I've got an appointment to get to. Okay, I've got something to think about. And so there's an essential connection here, which is that Ibadur Rahman are too busy worrying about the severity of the hereafter to be thinking about the silliness of this world. I'm going to say that again. They're too busy worrying about the severity of the hereafter to be thinking about the silliness of this world. And so I can't be worried about petty insults and foolish people taking aim at my reputation, which is, by the way, wajh, the face's reputation in the Arabic language, even in the Quran, that language, because I'm too focused on protecting my face from the fire on the Day of Judgment. I don't have time for all this. I've got to worry about that because, adab al-akhirah, the punishment and the hardship of the hereafter, is so much harder than anything that I could endure in this world. And I need to focus on that. As Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he once, he was an old man, he was in his 80s, and he pinched the ear of a young boy. And he felt bad. And he told the young boy, pinch my ear back. And the young boy was like, I'm not going to, this is a man, Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who's, who the Prophet ﷺ was shy of. And who the Prophet ﷺ said the angels are shy of. I'm not going to pinch your ear. And Uthman radiallahu anhu insisted, pinch my ear. And he kept on pulling back and saying, no, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm not going to pinch your ear. You're the Khalifa. You're the most noble man alive. I'm not going to pinch your ear. And Uthman radiallahu anhu said, pinch my ear. فَإِنَّ قِصَاصَ الدُّنْيَا أَهْوَنُ مِنْ قِصَاصِ الْآخِرَةِ. He said, pinch my ear because the consequences of this world are far lighter than the consequences of the hereafter. Okay, I'd rather get pinched in the ear now than pay the price of that injustice in the hereafter. And so the connection to the previous ayat is that this is a person that is way too busy, focused on the severity of the hereafter, to be thinking about the silliness of this world, including petty insults and foolish people, because they're worried about the very real consequences that exist in the hereafter for the wicked. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And this is also a hadith from Aisha radiallahu anha in regards to the severity of consequences. She asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that on the Day of Judgment, that people will be without clothes, people will be naked on the Day of Judgment. They won't have clothes. They'll be completely in their original state, naked, uncircumcised, no titles, no distinctions, no nothing. And Aisha radiallahu anha, out of her hayat, out of her shyness, and just a natural thought that came to her head, she said, Ya Rasulullah, Rijal wa Nisa, the men and the women, aren't they going to be looking at each other? Aren't they going to be looking at each other? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, O Aisha, and he said, Al-amru ashaddu min dhalik, because the matter is too severe for that. People will be so focused on the matter at hand that they won't even notice that people will be without clothes, including themselves, subhanAllah, to show you the severity of that. And so this is also a part of that there is a sense of the severity of the matter of the hereafter in front of them. And that sense of the severity of the hereafter and the possibility of punishment keeps those people focused on that. And so they don't worry about some of the things of this world that other people get obsessed with. And subhanAllah, this is really, something that's very important for all of us to think about. How much currency do you put in certain things being intact in this dunya? And I speak to myself first, all right? How much do we put in, this being intact and this being intact and this being intact? To where when a whole presents itself in one of those things, our core is disrupted, right? And so tie yourself to the hereafter, because that is certain. Tie yourself to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is a more worthy pursuit. Tie yourself to those things so that when this dunya just presents its usual wrinkles, your core goal and your core methodology of pursuit of that goal is not compromised in the process. There's another thing that we find here, and this is a consistent theme in the Quran, the connection between urgency and awareness. The connection between urgency and awareness. And so these are people that are contemplating the signs that Sheikh Yasir Fahmi, by the way, Sheikh Yasir Fahmi really, tonight I really benefited from his words, subhanAllah. I never thought about, I knew the hadith or the narration, the athar about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and talking about the gardens of the Hawamim, but just such a beautiful elaboration on the idea of signs and the blessing of signs. So there are two ways to become aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That we will show them our ayat bil afaq, in the horizons, wa fi anfusihim, and in themselves, until it is made clear to them annahu al-haq, that it is the truth. Okay? So there's a sense of urgency that comes with that sense of awareness. How? Surah Ali Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions الَّذِينَ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Okay? A people that are looking out to the horizons, looking out at the stars, looking out at the moon, looking out at the sun, looking out at the grass, looking out at the flowers, looking out at the mountains, looking out at the water, looking out at all of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heavens and the earth. And that brings them to a place of, oh Allah, this was not made in vain. مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. A hyper sense of awareness based upon the contemplation of the heavens and the earth. Ya Allah, this was not made in vain. Subhanak, how perfect are you? And what's the very next ask that comes? فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Protect us from the fire. Why? Because there's a connection between awareness and urgency. Okay? An urgency. Here, الَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. A person is taking to the corner of their home and in a place of prostration and prayer. Where is the awareness coming from? It's the awareness of self. The anfusihim, the awareness of our own selves, the awareness of our own creation, the awareness of the things that we have done. That's the type of awareness that we're developing here. And what's the next ayah? Okay, a sense of urgency. Oh Allah, protect us from the fire. Oh Allah, protect us from the punishment. And so there is an essential connection between urgency and between awareness and urgency, bil afaq wa fi anfusihim, in the heavens and the earth, and then within ourselves, as we beautifully elaborated on tonight by our dear Sheikh Yasir Fahmi. And so what does that create in a person? Okay? And I want to speak to this, that hope and fear, healthy hope and healthy fear, have very unique interventions into our tazkiyah, into our spirituality. Khawf, fear, protects from what? Fear protects from nifaq. It protects from hypocrisy. Fear protects from hypocrisy in a way that hope cannot. So khawf protects from nifaq. Fear protects from hypocrisy. Khawf protects from nifaq. Tama'a, which is hope, protects from what? It protects from shahawat. It protects from being led by our desires. Why? Because we learn to hope in something greater. We put the desire for Allah's paradise and Allah's garden and Allah's pleasure above our hopes and the desires and the things that we have access to in this world. But those are two very different interventions into our tazkiyah, and they're very necessary. Okay? So khawfan wa tama'a. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. They call out to their Lord in fear and in hope. Fear is necessary to protect us from nifaq, to protect us from hypocrisy. And that's why when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَهُمْ لَهَا سَابِقُونَ. Verses, I believe it's 60. Surah Al-Mu'minun, 60, 61, 62, somewhere there. But those are the people that rush to do good deeds. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, ahu alladhi yazni, is that the person that commits adultery, وَيَسْرِقْ وَيَشْرَبْ, is that the person who commits adultery and steals, or drinks alcohol? Meaning, sometimes we see that when a person makes tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in an effort to turn their lives around very quickly, they become, seemingly overzealous. So suddenly, they feel like they have to make up for an extreme life of sin with an extreme life of good deeds. And so they turn the corner all the way. And you hope that they don't burn out and they don't go to the extreme there. Because, all that's going to do is going to take them right back to where they came from, right? Setting themselves up to crash. Sometimes you see someone who does something terrible, and in the aftermath of doing something terrible, they have hyper tawbah, like hyper repentance. And that could be a good thing, but it could be a bad thing if they set then unrealistic expectations for themselves, which will inevitably lead to their disappointment and to their depression and to falling right back in where they came from. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam this ayah about these people that rush to do good, right? Because they were seeing this play out in their eyes. This is a society, the Sahaba were a society of converts, right? They were a society of converts. So they were seeing the Umar ibn al-Khattabs of the world, pre-Islam Umar radiallahu anhu, post-Islam Umar, pre-Islam Hamza, post-Islam Hamza radiallahu anhu. They were seeing this play out in front of their eyes. So is this who this is talking about, Ya Rasulullah? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, La ya bint as-Siddiq, no, O daughter of the truthful. And some of the scholars, they said that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say to her, bint as-Siddiq, the daughter of the most truthful, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praising her innocence and her sincerity and her truthfulness, radiallahu ta'ala anha. She said, ولكنه الذي يصلي ويصوم ويتصدق وهو مع ذلك يخاف الله عز وجل. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is the person who prays, who fasts, who gives charity, and with all of that, they're still afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They still have a healthy fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they're not proud or conceited. They don't feel like they've arrived in a way that they're going to stop because, hey, you know, alhamdulillah, I'm doing all of these things, so I must be good. Wallahi, that's a disease. May Allah protect us. Because it's so easy for us to not see this disease, right? When you're sinning, when you're in a place of sin, it's a lot easier for you to be able to recognize that you're in that place of sin. But when you're in a place of good deeds and you're developing pride and you're developing conceit and you're developing, a self-righteousness, it's a lot harder to see that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لَوْلَا تُذْنِبٌ خَشَيْتُ عَلَيْكُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. If you were not to sin, I would fear for you something greater than sin. Al-ujb, that you become conceited. You become conceited. So you start to see yourself committing good deeds and you start to look down on people and you start to belittle people. And so you start to put other people down. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a very powerful saying about this. He says that, and to be na'ima, for you to sleep all night and to wake up nadima, to wake up in regret. So to sleep all night and to wake up in regret is better than for you to spend the whole night in qiyamul layl and to wake up in the morning with pride. Okay? For you to sleep at night and then to wake up with a sense of regret that you missed your prayer is better than praying all night and then waking up with a sense of pride. All right? So why? Because that person who slept through the night and did not wake up and pray, they feel a sense of nadam, a sense of regret, and they want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're still trying to push themselves. Whereas that person who prayed all night maybe might think, mashallah, look at me. Okay? So this is something that we should take note of, and it is very important, especially for people that turn the corner with their religious lives. Sometimes they forget where they were before, and they start to look down on other people. And subhanAllah, the Salaf, one of the cures that we find from the Salaf, by the way, is that, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, because there's a connection here also. When the ignorant or the foolish would berate them, they would say salama. The Salaf would still believe that average layperson who doesn't have the best of akhlaq probably still has something redeeming that makes them better than me. Okay? So that sinner might be better than me, the scholar, because I sin in a way that other people don't see. It's not as obvious as that sinner. And maybe that sinner, the one that's known for their sin, while I'm known for my good, maybe that sinner has a good deed between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will redeem them, and that will save them, and that will enter them into paradise. And it might be that I, the person known for my good and known for my religiosity, I have a sin that will be fatal and that will lead me astray, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, and enter me into the hellfire. And so the Salaf, the pious predecessors, would not look down upon those people that were obviously committing sin, because they still knew that it could be that they were so aware of their own sins, right? And they were so afraid of their own selves that, they would say that maybe that person has something good about them. And I sin in ways that person does not sin. So that person might be better in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. than me. It's an important quality to have. And so these people, despite their, يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما, despite these beautiful qualities, still have a sense of humility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are still afraid of hypocrisy, are still afraid of their own sins, are still afraid of their own flaws, and they're hyper aware. And so because they're hyper aware, they have a hyper sense of urgency. And when I say khawf is a protection from nifaq in particular, fear is a protection from hypocrisy. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Sahaba used to ask the Prophet ﷺ about the good things and how they can attain them. He said, وَكُنْتُ أَسْأَلُهُ عَنِ الشَّرِّ, and I used to ask him about the bad things and how I can avoid them. And what did that earn Hudayfa radiallahu anhu? The Prophet ﷺ was so certain of Hudayfa's protection from nifaq, from hypocrisy, that he entrusted him with the names of the hypocrites. SubhanAllah, because that was his mindset, his attitude. He was so afraid of hypocrisy that the Prophet ﷺ saw him worthy of entrusting him with the names of the hypocrites. And guess what? Guess who the first person, actually the only person, to my knowledge, Allah knows best, I could be wrong, so please don't take this as a fact. To my knowledge, the only narration we have of a Sahabi asking Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala anhu about whether or not he was one of the hypocrites that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned was Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, of all people. Umar min al-mubashirin al-jannah, from those who were guaranteed paradise, from those who the Prophet ﷺ had extolled so many times, right? So many times, who the Prophet ﷺ said the shaitan flees his path. And Umar radiallahu anhu is asking Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, am I one of them? And he means it. Am I one of those hypocrites? SubhanAllah. If Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu has that khawf, has a fear that he might be falling short, and the long nights of qiyam and khidmah of Umar radiallahu anhu did not cause him to develop a sense of pride and a sense of certainty that he was in the clear and no longer had to ask Allah to protect him from punishment, who are we to think we should not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that anymore? Now, to bring this all back, there's a beautiful sequence to these ayat, by the way, because Allah's response in a few ayat is not to just assure the believers that they will be protected from the terrors of Jahannam, but instead Allah Azza wa Jal elaborates on the beauty of Jannah. To say, subhanAllah, that people that are like this, people that are calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection from the fire, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not merely going to protect them from the fire, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to elevate them in the gardens. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that whoever asks Allah for Jannah 3 times, whoever asks Allah for Jannah 3 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes Jannah to respond. Paradise responds. Jannah itself responds and says, "Oh Allah, enter her into me." And whoever seeks refuge from the fire 3 times, Jahannam, the fire responds and says, "Oh Allah, do not let him enter into me. Do not let her enter into me." And so what then of a people that say this throughout the night? رَبَّنَا اصْرِفْ عَنَّا عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمَ. Oh Allah, remove from us the fire of hellfire, the punishment of hellfire. Inna عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غَرَامًا. Verily, its punishment is like a stalking debtor, that comes to take its right. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to have that sense of urgency. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the punishment of the grave and the punishment of the fire. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replace that with the reward of the paradise of the Jannah and the companionship of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a people that have the healthy balance of the love of Allah and then hope in Allah and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla allow all 3 of those things, all 3 of those qualities to drive us back to Him so that we may be counted amongst Ibadur Rahman, amongst the servants of the Most Merciful. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Inshallah ta'ala, I will see you all tomorrow. Please keep us in your dua tonight. It's the 25th night. I'm going to be selfish here and ask you, please, in your moments of seclusion on these last 10 nights, if you can remember myself and my family, and all of the team members at Yaqeen and their families. If you can remember us all, inshallah ta'ala, every one of these last 10 nights, that's all I would ask of you in return for this, inshallah ta'ala. So please make dua for us, inshallah. And I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal accept it on behalf of you, on behalf of us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to be amongst those that catch Laylatul Qadr. اللهم آمين وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.